This 10-mile road, 55 miles northwest of New York City, is off of Route 23 in West Milford, New Jersey. West Milford is a pretty small town with a population of about 26,000. It's heavily wooded and there are almost no houses after you pass the first few miles. It's also considered one of the most haunted roads in America and even the world, and it's been featured on the Travel Channel's Most Terrifying Places in America. The road is so infamous that a movie was made about it in 2019, and it's called Clinton Road. It's not the best, but I did enjoy it. Ice-T's in it for about the first 10 minutes, and in the movie, a man's wife disappears on the road and his friends go along to help him find her. Throughout the night, they experience all kinds of paranormal activity, even some that I'll be talking about in this video. You can watch the movie for free on YouTube, and there is another movie that's called The Lake on Clinton Road, but I haven't seen that one. But back to the road. Clinton Road is long and desolate, and it's actually beautiful in the fall, but the lore and the history behind it is creepy, and it's fun to talk about around a crackling campfire. The road has been described as a back road to hell. It's said to be a place where strange creatures hide in trees, people mysteriously disappear, there's UFO activity, ghosts, and satanic activity has allegedly been witnessed. Strange lights have also been reported over Clinton Reservoir as well as the ponds along the road. So pretty much every cryptid and paranormal being that exists has been seen on this road at one point, allegedly. There have also been reports from travelers about behavior similar to black-eyed children. They'll see people dressed very strangely and they won't usually speak, or they don't know how to communicate properly because they aren't human. They just stare and they tend to appear or disappear suddenly, and sometimes they're only visible to certain people. While traveling down Clinton Road, people have reported feeling like they're being watched by something in the woods, and they hear disembodied children laughing. A man that was driving home one night saw a body bag in the middle of the road near Dead Man's Curve. He could even see the blood on the bag, so he put his car in reverse and he went back the way he came, and he called the police. But the police didn't find anything. They didn't find any blood, a body, or a trace of anyone. At the Warner Brothers owned Jungle Habitat, which is a now abandoned animal theme park, a kangaroo, an emu, some peacocks, a baboon, a pack of wolves, and a lion were some of the animals that escaped, and they were spotted on the road in the 70s. And some of their offspring may still be out there. On November 15th, in 2014, a 16-year-old girl was sitting in the back seat in a car that was being driven by her friend. And as they drove on the road, which the driver had done many times, he approached Dead Man's Curve and his car began to understeer. He then lost control and he veered off the side of the road and he hit a tree. The 16-year-old's injuries were so severe that she is now a paraplegic. From 2004 to 2017, there were 115 accidents, with 32 of those occurring at Dead Man's Curve. This is Cross Castle. It was built in 1905 and was abandoned in 1919 after the owner died. A fire later destroyed the castle, leaving only 4 walls behind. Eventually, it started to crumble and was covered in graffiti, so it was knocked down in 1988 because it was deemed unsafe. Those brave enough to venture into the woods at night have claimed to hear strange chanting and evil laughter. Hikers, teenagers, Satan worshippers, and the KKK are said to have hung out there, according to the lore. And even back in the early 1900s, the woods were believed to be evil and full of witches and bad spirits. Here are 2 accounts from people who have visited Cross Castle. After one night of hearing tales, me and 6 others decided to go to the castle. We parked our cars, lit a fire, and drank some beer. After 30 minutes, we began to hear chanting and chains rattling. One of the girls started to go into a seizure. 3 of us tried to move her, but to no avail. It was like she was nailed to the rock. Then the chanting stopped. The girl came around and we all looked at each other like, what the hell is going on here? In 1977, I had a friend who lived near Clinton Road. He used to take me on All Hallows Eve to spy on the Wiccans that were practicing in the areas near his house. The proof I have is more than a kid's flashback of witches. It pertains to what was written on the walls at the castle, and how a historical fact about the writing will reveal that a satanic movement was using the area for their practices. It was a nice afternoon in 1977. We decided to get our packs, a tent, and a rifle to spend the night up in the woods. I took a journal along with me, and when we came upon the castle, we were amazed at how it stood out in the woods. We went inside and were shocked to see 2 huge boards with words spelled out in red paint. The nature of the writing intrigued me, so I copied down what I saw, and my friend snapped a picture. The journal stayed in a box, but I eventually started going through everything, so I read it. What was once scribbled down in my youth was now revealed as one of the writings of Anton LaVey of the Church of Satan. I went to a local bookstore to match my journal with the Lex Satanicus. Now, when I go to Clinton Road, I look at everything in a different light. This is the Clinton Furnace. It's an abandoned iron smelter from the 1800s, but it's often mistaken for a Druid temple, and there are rumors that rituals and other nefarious activities take place there. The Ghost Boy is the most talked about ghost that haunts Clinton Road. Some say that the boy met his end when he fell into the river and drowned when he was sitting on the edge of the bridge. Others say he fell into the water to avoid getting hit by a car, or that he fell through the ice and drowned. There is more than one bridge on Clinton Road, so no one really knows which bridge he supposedly fell from. A lot of people will say it's the bridge at Dead Man's Curve, but no one really knows for sure. The legend says that if you toss coins off the bridge, the ghost boy will throw them back at you, or he will place them in the middle of the road the next time you drive down the road. Others have reported seeing the face of a young boy reflected back at them in the water. On the road, people have encountered a scary black truck that seems to appear out of nowhere. It'll get really close to your rear bumper, it'll flash its lights, and then just disappears. According to the story, a man named Giles Jones once lived nearby in a farmhouse. He was known for being a very cruel man and was infamous for wielding his shotgun and chasing off anyone who came too close to his property. He would often follow trespassers for as long as it took them to get back into town before he turned around and headed back home. Clinton Road went by his house, and then it went into the woods where it became narrow and impassable. And it was because of this dead end that Giles felt that Clinton Road belonged to him. Time went by, and one day Giles died from a heart attack while he was working in the fields, and since he didn't have any family, his property, along with his black truck, was abandoned and fell into decay. And this is when the legend of the black truck began. It's said that if you drive down Clinton Road late at night and you honk your horn 3 times, Giles will come chasing you down in his truck, and he will fire his shotgun out the window. And even to this day, teenagers will drive by and honk their horns, and it's very annoying to the people that live on the road because it wakes them and their children up. But anyway, a few people in town, mostly kids, said they saw the black truck themselves, but no one really took them seriously or paid attention. It was later reported that a group of teens entered the Dunes Cantina, and they were talking loudly amongst themselves. They were talking about their intention to drive down Clinton Road and honk their horn, and they were planning on spray painting their initials on Giles' black truck. The bartender at Dunes Cantina, he tried to warn the teens to just leave it alone, but they just wouldn't listen. And Jim Ford, a resident of the area, was asleep when he heard the sound of gunfire in the distance, and it woke him up from his sleep. He described the night that the teens were found in their car. They had been in a terrible crash. Jim stepped out onto his front porch just in time to see a bright red Firebird speed down the road with a black pickup truck right behind it. Jim remembered seeing the white initials spray painted on the side of the black truck, and the paint looked like it was still wet because it was dripping down the side of the truck. Jim was worried, so he called the sheriff and told him that something about the scene just wasn't sitting right with him. And hours later, the teens were found dead. The car, it didn't run off the road. It didn't even hit a tree. It was found smack dab right in the middle of the road, and it had been smashed in on every side. The boys' bodies had been so mangled that bits of their flesh and bone and blood had sprayed all over the other boys' bodies. The sheriff saw Giles' old truck just sitting in its usual spot. It had been sitting there for so long that grass and weeds were almost touching the roof. Because of this, the sheriff was ready to leave until he noticed the fresh white spray paint all over the truck's rusted metal. It was the initials of the boys that were found dead in their car. More paint was found on the truck's front bumper, but it wasn't white spray paint, and it wasn't wet. It was bright red, and it had been caked into the bumper through heavy force. It was the same color as the teen's red Firebird, and the cause of the crash and the deaths of the boys was never solved. In May of 1983, a cyclist saw a huge vulture suddenly fly out of the woods, and then they saw another one. He went to check out what was going on, and that's when he saw a large bag. Inside of that bag was a human head. The police were notified and an autopsy was performed. The man died due to foul play, but he didn't die as recently as his body made it seem. There were ice crystals in his veins, and it was determined that he had died several days before. The killer wanted to make the date of death seem more recent, so he disguised the time of the death by freezing the bodies of his victims in an industrial freezer. The victim was identified as Daniel Deppner. He was a business associate of Richard the Iceman Kotlinski, a known contract killer for the mob. Kotlinski, Deppner, and another man were planning a scam to steal cars, but because Kotlinski did not trust them, he decided to kill them in order to protect himself. And it's believed that Dan died from cyanide poisoning because it was one of Kotlinski's favorite murder methods, but it's very hard to prove death by cyanide. The investigation took 3 years, but Kotlinski was finally arrested. He confessed, and he proudly told police that he had actually killed hundreds of men throughout his life. He had been a killer since he was 13 years old. He died in 2006 and was suffering with dementia. He was 70.